Okay, brothers and sisters, we are on the last part 4, the Curses of Israel. I named this part, Are Men and Women Destroyed? And also, A Dangerous Life. This is, the part where I do have to warn you, viewer discretion is advised here. There's some very terrible things that we've had to endure. And remember, brothers and sisters, we can't blame this on Edom and the white man, so much so as we have to blame on ourselves that God warned us these things would take place because of our disobedience. All right, so we're going to go ahead and begin and finish up this lesson. This entire lesson was a 3-part series. Started with the real Hebrews, then the blessings of Israel, then the cursings of Israel. And I certainly hope you all are able to learn that these curses apply only to the people God says are Israel. They do not apply to anyone else. And you tell me in your own honest opinion if it is not a group of curses that apply to us today as the so-called African American and the others who are scattered across the nation, across the world. The curses of our men. It says in Deuteronomy chapter 28, even the most gentle and kind man among you will become cruel or look threateningly to his brother. So how much of this brother on brother hate? Brothers hate brothers, and there's a lot of black on black crime. But it also says that he will look threateningly to his brother and his wife, whom he loves. Black men are not very faithful and can be abusive. Okay, the things that are in parentheses are my own words, and the things that are in brackets actually came from the Expanded Bible version. And it says, of his lap. So the wife of his lap means a wife that he loves, that, kind of like you're looking at her sitting on his lap and him showing her love. And his children, who are still alive and remain. And let's just take a look before we show you some visuals of the way this is going. Our brothers have a history of running. I know someone very close to me who's had children, and the father literally ran and hid and worked undercover jobs for 18 years so that he would not have to be responsible for child support. Rather than getting to know his children, supporting them, and giving those children validation, and a foundation by being in their lives. And that's really sad, isn't it? But that happens with a lot of our brothers and sisters. So we know that goes on, right? So this does nothing but destroy the child, because those children, I know those children, they're adults now, and they're both hurting deeply behind not having their father in their lives. Now, if you ask me, it's a lot more difficult to run and hide for 18 years than it is to just stand up and deal with your responsibilities. And I know this woman, the mother of these kids, and she is very reasonable. She probably wouldn't have even required child support, just support from the man, and just to be in their lives is what she wanted the most. And this is a family member of mine, brothers and sisters, so I know the whole situation very well. I also know in my own personal family, there's very few men who even stayed in and tried to be there for their kids. My wife, my sister has been married. She's the only one who had a long, successful marriage in our family, and so they have had a father in their lives. They're very stable, grounded children. You can see that. My brother and I, we made a commitment and a promise to one another that we would never leave our kids, and neither one of us left our kids, so we both stayed in to try to break this curse. But the majority of people that I've seen, family and friends and all other family members that I know and have had in my life, have actually not had their fathers. And, the fathers don't stay home. So they look threateningly towards their brother and also their wives and their children. So we have disdain for our family as men, which is very sad. All right, brothers and sisters, I do have to apologize for the first two slides. I'm going to let those go, but did not have my headset and microphone. We're just using the computer mic, which doesn't sound as good. So now we're back in business. All right, so we look at some of these statistics of our brothers. We're looking at our brothers. There's good men, but sisters, and so let's not leave that out completely. Let's not forget that there's some good men, and I think a lot of sisters don't realize that a lot of the good, as we say, good black men, well, they're married. A lot of them are married and taken. A black man who's doing right in the world and doing right by himself and believes on God and follows God and those kind of things, they don't stay out there single long. Okay, so a lot of times women are saying there's no black men because they're in jail or they're whatever, they're gay or whatever women say. Don't curse yourself with your words. The first thing a woman should do if she's looking for a good man is become good herself. You want a man of God, be about God yourself. Learn the truth of who you are and follow God. Follow the laws, statutes, and commands, and God will bless you. I am newly married, and it's exactly what I did. I gave up sins. I gave up different things that I knew God wanted me to give up and stop doing in order to obey Him properly. And I had been asking Him for a wife, and He delivered. He delivered a godly woman who has just been a blessing and untold blessing in my life. So it's the same with you women. If you want a man, the first thing you do is you seek God by obeying Him and doing right by Him, and then you let Him do the work in your life. You let Him provide you with the man He wants you to have. But one thing we have to stop doing is we have to stop giving in to fornication and things like this before you prove the man. First, you get a man and you make him stick with you and you make him be your friend. And if he can't do that, is he really the guy for you? If a guy's not willing to respect you and wait for you, is he really the man for you? All right, I didn't mean to get into that. So let's get back onto the topic of our black men. I just like it to be recognized that all black men are not bad, but a very large portion of us are. A very large portion fit that curse. We don't take care of our kids. We don't stay at home with our wives. We're evil to both of them, and it's a curse, brothers and sisters. We're living a curse, and we have to understand that God placed this curse on us. And in order to break the curse, the first thing we have to do is go back to obeying God and following God. That's the first step. As it says here in Black Americans, I'll read, it's from the U.S. Census of 2010 and the 2012 FBI crime statistics. And it has, as you can see, Reverend Al Sharpton, as he calls himself in the back, will race bait for money. And, I hope you guys know this guy is a scam. He is no good to our people. If he is, how come he's been in activism for as long as he has, and he hasn't, our people haven't benefited from him. He is paid by them to do what he does. And he keeps us calmed down. That's his job. There are many like that, like Jesse Jackson. I normally don't like to speak on names, but I just think, we have to recognize that there are black people who say there are black leaders that are not doing anything for our people, brothers and sisters. We're not benefiting from these people. We're not benefiting from these guys helping, our people. Just like our president, our last president, Barack Obama, he did nothing for the African American, so-called African American people. He did nothing for us, brothers and sisters. He spent his entire legislation putting forward the laws that are going to usher in martial law and take away rights from us, and he did all his work for homosexuals. Let's face it. He's the one who ushered in the homosexual national agenda that we have right now. And it is law now. And thanks to our first black president, he's the one who did all that. But as we look at the statistics here, it says black Americans are 12.61% of the U.S. population, yet they commit 32% of all rapes,
34.1% of all assaults, 54.9% of all robberies, and 49.4% of all murders. 91% of murdered black Americans are killed by other black Americans. And the truth isn't racist, it's just the truth, is what they're saying here. And I'm going to put out a disclosure here. I have not checked these facts. I believe they're pretty close to true, if not exactly on the money. But I just don't like to, give sign my name on things that I have not researched. But I looked up these documents and these photos, and I did research, but I didn't research the actual statistics. I believe them to be true or close to the truth, however. The one that stands out there is 91% of blacks are murdered by blacks. I hate to refer to us as a colored brothers and sisters, but it just, gives you that understanding that we're used to. We know who we are. But we are the children of Israel, and these curses are against us. And God spoke about the men. He says, the tender man among you. Now you can see in the left picture here with the guy sticking a gun in the car of another gentleman. I believe this was from Boys in the Hood. And so he's got the gun in his face, and the guy's trying to be tough and stand there, and what else can you do? Somebody sticks a gun in your face like that. But that is a tender man sticking that gun in his face. And so what they're saying is, we're calling him, the Lord calls him tender because he's easily provoked. He's sensitive. That's what happens when men are raised strictly by women. I'm not putting women down. I'm just simply saying a man needs a man. A boy needs a man. And, that man will instill certain, things in that young man that will teach him how to be more reasonable and more logical and less, offended. See, tender means easily offended. They get angry easy. You step on their shoes, and you've heard about people who have shot and killed or hurt other people for such small things like looking at them or staring at them or saying something to them that hurt their feelings. Or that's what actually is happening when young men get angry quickly. Their feelings are getting hurt, and that's what's happening. Okay? Or they're being offended. All right? And sometimes you have a right to be offended if somebody is setting out to, offend you purposely and be negative to you. That's an automatic feeling. But, we're killing each other on high levels, and this is not right. This is a part of the curse, brothers and sisters. It says, are there more college-age men than blacks blacks in prison? Okay, so it says black man in jail or college, and we'll get some statistics here, breaking the imagery. Young black men are more engaged in crime than education. And it says here, total black men 18 through 24 in prison or jail is 164,000. Total number of black men 18 through 24 in college is 674,000. That's pretty good. We're showing the numbers are higher for college. Um, that doesn't seem right to me. It seems like it must be talking about a state or something, because 164,000 in prison, it seems like a low number. Um, but I, just wanted to give some of the statistics that are out here, and we'll see here that this is the case. And I'm almost thinking that the total number of black men in prison is that 164,000, excuse me, in college is the 164,000 and vice versa there. But, there we have it. We have a lot of our black men are doing the kinds of things that wind them up in college, as we see on the right here. And, we know what's out there, right, brothers and sisters? We all live here on this land, and we are in this country, and we know you got to be careful. One of the most predominant persons you have to be careful of is young black men, because they're very angry, and that's what they mean by effeminate. Effeminate men are not just gay men or feminine men. They're men who are not men, and they get angry easily, and they So those are some of the curses on our men. But, we'll get into the women shortly here. But I did want to say, uh, in defense of some men, the court system is set up against them. The child support system is set up against them. I'm living proof of that. I paid my child support and paid it out to the penny over 15 years with my daughters. But the court system was very, very rough on men who did not pay. And I've been to court and seen how they are. And it seems to me like not paying for your children's care should not be a good enough reason to go to prison. Really? Do you think so? I just don't think a man should have to go to prison because you're putting him in a position where he can't do anything at that point. And then you're also possibly destroying his life. Okay, and should a man be destroyed? Should his life be destroyed? I admit you should take care of your kids. I've taken care of my kids. But I don't think a man's life should be destroyed for not being responsible for his kids. I don't think his life should be destroyed. I think he's going to reap what he sows through the Lord. Okay, so I think a lot of women have taken advantage of that to hurt men because they're hurt. And we all know that's true, right? We all know women who've done that, you know. I'm not here to make everybody happy. A lot of what I'm going to say is going to upset people, but it's true. I'm not speaking of things that I haven't experienced myself. I've been attacked by both the mothers of my kids for long, long periods of time, and I have literally been there the entire time for my kids, loved my kids, and always paid child support for my kids. And one of the most difficult things I've experienced in life is the attacks that have been made against me by their mothers because their mothers were angry and hurt. And that brings us right to what we're talking about here. This is also a curse. I wish I had known this before I had children and got married back then because, I'm only saying this to say I would have had more knowledge and understanding of why I was going through what I went through. I'm living proof of this, brothers and sisters. I've experienced it. So no one can sit here and tell me anything about it. All right, it says right here, the most gentle and kind woman among you, so gentle and kind she would hardly even walk on the ground. And what are they saying there? The Hebrew Israelite women back in the day were just the most gentle and kind and beautiful, and they were so dainty and well manicured and taken care of that they didn't even like their feet to hardly touch the ground. And that's what we're starting with on this verse because that's what we came from. When we're at our best and we're following God, these are the kind of women we have. But instead, it says, will be cruel or look threatening to her husband whom she loves. And I think that's so important right there, the last couple of verses there, whom she loves. Because, my goodness, brothers and sisters, if she loves that man, why is she so mean and cruel to him? Why does she look threateningly at him? You know? And God considers a husband anyone you sleep with. So while you women are fornicating with different men, God's considering those men your husbands. Because, spiritually, when you lay with a man or you lay with a woman, that's your wife or your husband. You do want to do that and make it official. You don't want to go around saying everyone you're with is your spouse. But what I'm simply saying is this is how it's looked at spiritually, brothers and sisters. So, whether you're married to that person or not, the Bible is saying this gentle, dainty, kind woman will be cruel or look threatening to her husband whom she loves. And we see that. Now, sisters, do not, take offense all the time when someone speaks the truth. I know there is a lot of good women out there. I married one, but I also married ones that were not. Okay, and I experienced that as well. And I know that there's tons of good women out there, tons of women who are of God, and tons of women who are spiritual. But let's look at these young women in their 20s, in their 30s, even upwards in their 40s and 50s. There are so many mean and vengeful black women out here. I mean, you can almost say we have some of the meanest, most vengeful women around. They won't let men see their kids even though the men pay child support and love them. I had that happen. I had to deal with that my whole life with one of my children. Of course, I went to court and fought for rights. So I have my joint custody and visitation and all those things, which I wouldn't even get to see my child. Wouldn't have been able to get to see my child on a regular basis or have regular visitations with my child had I not done this. Is that fair? I mean, women say the men don't do anything for their kids, but I'm living proof that you can try to do everything right for your kids and it doesn't please some women. Okay? If you go and get married, to someone else or have another girlfriend or something, women try to break up your relationships or your new families. Women use the child support system against the men, and they remain unfair sometimes and use the unfair court and legal system against brothers, and they're cruel regardless of the outcome. They don't care what the outcome is. If the court decides to put you in jail for something, the women are okay with that because they want to get back at you so bad. All right, so this is the way our women are. So this is I'm not saying please stop women. I'm saying you are cursed. Just like the men are cursed, so are you. You're doing these things out of ignorance of the love of God and of the law of God. And it says, and to her son and to her daughter. So are you really loving your daughter when you're keeping her father out of her life? When you're keeping his father out of his life? That's not loving your child. And a lot of women don't care anything about their kids. All they care about is their hair and their nails and their this and their that and their coach bags and their clothes. And, if they get a man in their lives, they don't care anything about their kids sometimes. I'm not saying this is all women. I'm saying this is a lot of our women. This curse is real, and this curse exists in our community. And if you don't want to admit that and accept that, you must live on Mars. Because we all know this is the case, especially if you're a black American in this country. You know this is real. You know, here we see that women and men also are not good to their children on a large scale, not teaching them correctly and not helping them become productive adults. And what is it we're not teaching them, brothers and sisters? We're not teaching them the love of God through the Word of God, the laws of God. Those are what teach your kids how to behave and how to perform. They teach your kids when and when not to be with women uh, and with boys. So you got your girls being with boys and having babies prematurely. Your sons are doing the same thing. This is not helping. Now your son's in trouble with the law down the road, and your daughter is saddled with a child that she doesn't know how to care for. These are the curses of Israel, brothers and sisters. And these curses are not on other nations the way they are on us. I mean, we might have other nations and other nationalities that we see struggle with child support and things like that, but we are the epitome, we're the cream of the crop when it comes to this stuff. More curses regarding women. We'll see in verse 57 it says, she will give birth to a baby, okay, but she will plan to eat the baby, and what comes after the birth itself, which is the afterbirth, that which comes out between her feet. She'll plan to eat that. She will eat them secretly while the enemy surrounds the city. And those people will make you starve in all your cities in the dire position that the siege of your enemies places you. All right, so this is talking about two things. First thing it's talking about is the uh, horrible atrocities that happened to our people in 70 AD when, yes, our people were surrounded by Roman armies for a period of years that caused them to begin to experience famine, and they wouldn't let food in or out. They'd kill anybody who tried to come in or out. So they let us die. And as a result, the Bible is saying here that she'll give birth to the baby, but she'll plan to eat the baby. And that's just really unfortunate, brothers and sisters, but we were eating our own people during this siege. And it's called the destruction of Jerusalem, 70 AD. Google that if you want to see if I'm telling the truth. Plus, it's not me talking, brothers and sisters. It's Deuteronomy 28, verse 57 talking. This is God prophesying what will happen if we disobey him. Now, isn't this terrible that this would happen and we wouldn't be in enough fear of this to prevent it? This also refers to uh, the fact that the mother is putting herself before the children in a lot of cases. This is a curse of our people, right? We're not saying every mother does this, because black women, you're phenomenal mothers, okay? So don't get all bent out of shape because I'm reading the Bible to you. I'm just reading the Bible. And there's a lot of truth to what the Bible is saying. So I want you to get out of your emotions and get into the Word and understand that this happened to our people and it continues to happen to our people symbolically as well. Because there's a lot of sisters who put themselves before their kids and they take the resources they have and they eat them or they consume them and they don't give their kids. How many men have I talked to that have said before they have paid child support and the woman is we're talking about ghetto women who don't, do the right thing. Their hair and their nails are done and their weave is straight, but their kids are wearing rags. So it's talking about that kind of thing. And, our people, they're saying those people will make us starve in our cities. And this is also a part of the ghetto experience. And this is one of those curses coming up here, brothers and sisters, that we're very, very sorry that this has happened. I mean, as a brother of our Hebrew Israelite women, this one hurts a lot for me personally. I'm very saddened and very disappointed at the way our women have been treated throughout the history of their captivity. And, this has happened in other parts of the world and during other captivities with our people, brothers and sisters, that our women, our wives, our daughters, and our mothers, see, we think of our women being raped, but it's really not just our women, it's our wives, our daughters. Can you imagine this? Your mother, your sister, your aunt, your grandmother. You're having to witness this, and so this has been a horrible tragedy and a travesty against our people that has gone through our generations and has affected us. It has affected our people, this kind of abuse. And it says this will happen. So, we have to ask ourselves, why did the Hebrew Israelites ignore these curses? They weren't afraid of God. And see, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, right? It says in verse 30, you will be engaged to a woman, but another man will force her to have sexual relations with him. He will have her. And no other nation was raped like our women was historically in slavery. Uh, there were humane methods of slavery in the past in history, and usually it was 7 years, and you could have your freedom back, and you might work off your debts, or you might do something, and it's not the end of your life. But in this colonial slavery, which also took place in the Arab world, um, our women were just, raped and taken from us, and our daughters were taken from us and used for their pedophilia. And this is horrible. So, I'm very disappointed and upset with the Edomites, the Europeans, the white nations, the Western world who did this to our people. But I'm more upset now that I know the truth with our people because our people have allowed this to happen from disobedience. It's been disobedience, brothers and sisters, that allowed us to have to endure these curses. And again, this lesson is on the 28 curses of Israel and using these curses, well, chapter 28 of Deuteronomy, using these curses to identify who the true children of Israel are. The Lord says he will place a sign on his people, and that sign is basically these curses. So you are to look at these curses and identify them. Are these our people? If they're not, what people has fit all these curses? Because remember, all these curses have to fit one people. And who's fit these curses other than the African American? It goes on to say, you will build a house, but you will not live in it. You will plant a vineyard, but you will not get its grapes or enjoy it. And we know that's uh, quite the definition. these sad pictures here, you know. And believe me, brothers and sisters, I tried to find the least offensive pictures I could find, but I did not want to, I had to offend everyone with this lesson. This was a very hard lesson for me. I'm not gonna tell you at all that this did not affect me emotionally. Just putting this together and reading about and watching and reliving slavery. Like we see up here in the top left corner, this is a movie that if you have the stomach for, you'll learn a lot about slavery, but it is a movie that will bring tears to your eyes. I watch it with my son, and neither one of us could get through this movie without being extremely, emotional at times because of what we had to witness our people going through. And that's one reason I like the movie. It's called 12 Years a Slave, is even though it was horrible and it was hard to watch, it's what we need to see so we can get the understanding of what our people have been through. These are curses, brothers and sisters, that God placed on us. He allowed the Gentile nations and the Edomites to take over our people and to take them captive. He allowed it. When they came and took us out of Israel, the Assyrians came and removed the 10 tribes of Israel. They just came and took them. And the Babylonians came and took Judah. Okay, and these were all prophesied in the book of Isaiah 100 and 120 years before they took place to exact detail. So God is predicting this, and we still ignored his will. We're doing it now, brothers and sisters. I'm trying to teach you to stop doing this. Obey God, obey his law, statutes, and commands, because we are still suffering these curses. And as you see, as we look down below, you know, um, the guy's taking the woman, and he's trying to get with her, and then he got another guy. I don't know if he's whipping a man or a woman, but it looks like a man, and it looks like he's you know keeping him from doing anything about it. And you look at the top right there and the bottom left. I mean, those are self-explanatory. Our women were just used and abused, and imagine being a slave and being working all day and all night, and then having to deal with this all day, excuse me, sun up to sundown, and then having to deal with this in the night. It's a horrible thing to have to go through, brothers and sisters, but we have had to endure it, and it's a part of our history. There's a curse of death and diminished numbers here, brothers and sisters. Verse 58 says, "Be careful to obey everything in these teachings, laws, and instructions that are written in this book and this scroll." How many times does God tell us what we have to do to avoid this? He keeps telling us over and over again. All we got to do is what he says. God is the creator of the world. He is our Father, and he is the creator of us. Why wouldn't we have to obey him? Our children have to obey us. Why would it be any different, brothers and sisters? We're disobeying him by not following the word that he gave us. You must respect the glorious and wonderful or awesome name of the Lord your God. It's saying it right here. And we didn't do it, so we endured. Verse 62, your people, or you people, may have outnumbered the stars, but only a few of you will be left, because you did not obey or listen to the voice of the Lord your God. So there, God has diminished our numbers. Now, we may have, regrown. Our numbers may have increased significantly now that we've been in captivity for so long. We've grown and grown and grown. But during the times when we were being removed from the land of Africa and the other nations for slavery purposes, our people were just being killed and slaughtered left and right. Our numbers were diminished tremendously, brothers and sisters. Just as the Lord once happy, just as the Lord was once happy or pleased and delighted with you and gave you good things, prosperity, made you grow in number, so then the Lord will be happy, pleased, or delighted to ruin and destroy you, and will be removed from the land you are entering to take as your own possession. So there the Lord is saying, and people say God is all love. He's love, but he's very just. And in his, being a just God, he has to give us what he told us he would give us if he gave us a promise. So he's saying he's delighted to ruin us because we disobeyed him. So what he's doing is he's teaching us a lesson. I think that's why we're more apt and more prepared and more ready to rule in Jerusalem because of the way we've been persecuted and downtrodden. We become humble. And those of us who are still not humble and who are disobeying God, I don't know what to tell you, brothers and sisters. I'm working my tail off, sounding like a broken record to teach you the way. And if you're denying it or just, refusing it, you know, it's a testimony against you, especially if you've heard the truth. I just wanted to touch base where it says he removed us from the land that, he was saying will remove us from that land that we're entering to take possession of if we disobey him. So he said a lot of that in these 3 verses of what he would do if we don't obey him. So God is constantly telling, he's fair. He's saying, I will bless you above all nations and place you on high, above and not beneath. You will lend and not borrow. Everything about you will be blessed if you obey me. And then he tells us what will happen if we don't obey him. And we don't seem to think that that's important. But we paid the price for it. Again, staying focused. What people have experienced these curses besides us? Okay, besides the blacks around the world who have been persecuted. You know, some other nations have been persecuted, um, but not with all these curses. Death on the high seas is another way our numbers were diminished. I stepped outside of the Bible on this just to get a little history. It says slaves were introduced to new diseases and suffered from malnutrition long before they reached the New World. It is suggested that the majority of deaths on the voyage across the Atlantic, the Middle Passage, occurred during the first couple of weeks and were a result of malnutrition and disease encountered during the forced marches and subsequent internment camps that we were placed in at the slave camps on the coast. And those were some horrific things that were done to us, brothers and sisters, as we were being marched out of the land into the slave camps and the slave fortresses and castles that they created for us. They did some terrible things to us, brothers and sisters, and they always wanted us to witness the horrible things that they did to us so that we would live in fear of them and obey them. The estimates of the Hebrew slaves that died in the Middle Passage are of course not documented. Scholars, however, have estimated that anywhere from 50 to 100 million deaths from the acquisition of these slaves from the continent of Africa down through the Middle Passage occurred. Now, we hear all the time about the 6 million Jews that were killed. And I'm not saying that this was not a tragedy uh, to people who want to get angry about that. What I'm simply saying is compare these 2 tragedies. We got nothing for all of our lost lives. We were killed and, upwards in 8, 9, 10 times the numbers that they were killed in with way more horrific tragedies. We've all heard of the cutting the mothers out of the wombs, the babies out of the wombs of the mothers and killing the baby when it comes out. And these things happen to our people. I never heard the Jews mention those kind of things. So we've got to know what happened to us, brothers and sisters. There's nobody who's suffered more horrific tragedies and holocausts than our people. Either way, as I say here, there had to be tens of millions of lives lost during our holocaust of injustice. The scattering of Israel is a very important part of the prophecies, brothers and sisters. Remember, we're identifying who the true Hebrew Israelites are, right? Based on these curses. 64 says, "And the Lord will scatter you among the nations, from one end of the earth to the other." There are some verses there, some precepts that you can read up on to confirm. There's really tons of verses on scattering of Israel. I found of 164 times mentioned in the Bible. There you will serve other gods of wood and stone, gods that neither you nor your ancestors or fathers have known. Now, who else could this be, right? Because we were taken to a land and we're serving gods that we had not known. See, Christianity was a new religion. It was after 70 AD. It was more like around 325 AD when the Roman Catholic Church really organized the Christian religion and came and injected all of the Babylonian traditions like Christmas and Easter and sun worship and Sunday worship into Christianity. So Christianity is a created religion. Just because Jesus came, he didn't say start a new religion for me, brothers and sisters. He was a Hebrew Israelite. He gave his testimony and taught his mission and taught uh, his word that was given. And see, Jesus is responsible for the Old Testament and the New Testament word because Jesus is the word. So a lot of people don't realize it, but Jesus is the God of the Old Testament. He just gave up his Godhead. He gave up his power to come down as a man and to fulfill the sacrifice so we could get the gift of salvation. But all the word belongs to Jesus. So he was a Hebrew Israelite. He said in Matthew 5, chapters 17 through 19, not to just do away with the law or the prophets. You read those chapters, those verses yourself, and see Jesus never said the law has passed away or do away with the law. He gives some warnings on those who teach that too. So you pastors should be in fear of teaching the church to disobey the word of God. That is a very dangerous, position for you to put yourself in. God places a lot of warnings on pastors who teach false doctrine like that. And the doctrine came from the Roman Catholic Church. It didn't come from Jesus. It didn't come from God. All right, so we're worshiping Christianity. The other thing was stone, or that refers to the Kaaba. Christianity and Islam um, are these two religions, and we never knew these religions. They were created by Satan. All right, these are things our ancestors didn't know because Islam came. The Quran was written around 700 AD. So see, all these came way after the teachings of Israel, from the God of Israel to Moses and the prophets. Even after the apostles and Jesus is when all these religions came into play. And so we have the Nation of Islam here in the United States, right? We have Islamic practicing Hebrews all over the world. Even the Moors, which were Hebrews, were Islamic. They'd switched over to the Islamic religion. You see, they didn't do too well with that. I mean, they conquered and they ruled Europe for a while, but it didn't last because, again, they were following after other gods. God has not told us to do this, brothers and sisters. You think Christianity is good because it has the name Christ in it, but Christ told you that be not deceived, for many will come in my name and say they are Christ, and they're not. They're coming to you in the name of Christ, and they're false prophets. He told you to. That's Matthew 24. He told you to beware of that. Are you going to beware of deceit and false prophets when Jesus said to do it? No. We just follow whatever our pastors and preachers tell us to follow. We don't challenge them with any of the scriptures that brothers like myself place before you, in front of you. All right, so God scattered us among all nations. We're the only people that have been scattered among all nations. We were given into the gods that we wanted to worship. So we want to worship the Babylonian god of Christianity. So he gave us unto their worship. You want, to worship Islam? He let us have that. But they haven't saved us now, have they? Because we are still to this day in no other people scattered into all nations through captivity. And this is a depiction, a famous depiction of Assyria as they took our people, out of the land, out of the land of Jerusalem. This is a depiction of that. You know, they took us out and they marched us out of there. Okay? And imagine how long and arduous that journey was for our people marching into the land of Assyria to be captive. You know, a lot of them probably died. Um, you know, this was also done in Babylon, you know, excuse me, in the southern part of Israel, where the Babylonians took over, you know. So, you know, we were just ruined and destroyed for our disobedience. It's always the same thing, brothers and sisters. It's our disobedience. And isn't it unique that we're disobeying in the same fashion that we were back then? You know, I'm hoping I reach somebody. You know, brothers and sisters, we're just not paying attention, you know, sometimes. And we're following after other gods and we don't know it. Challenge yourself. Your salvation is yours to keep and it's yours to lose. All right, if we take a look at the scattering of the nation of Israel in the slave trade, you know, we've seen these maps a lot, right? You know, we've seen them all over the place, right? And so, you know, when we see these maps, we don't really think about that these are the children of Israel. We just think these are the slaves that were sent all over the world. But have we not seen over and over again that God has prophesied that his people would be scattered throughout all nations? And if you look at this, doesn't it look like all nations to you? I mean, we were scattered northward here, you know, as you see north of Africa, we were scattered there, and we were scattered, excuse me, to Asia and Arabia, and there's many more maps like this that give more detail. You can see up here, we're scattered into all of Europe, okay? That's that area. And then, of course, scattered into South America, scattered into North America, right? Constantly scattered everywhere. So now one thing I'd like to show you is like here is Israel. Okay, it's right around here, right? And it kind of goes upward right in this area. Okay, because you know the children of Israel left Egypt, right? Here's Cairo, Egypt. So we left Egypt and went into Israel, and then we began to sin. So we were scattered. One thing I wanted to bring out here is you see this right here? It says Yoruba slave coast. Well, the Yoruba Jews are very popular. We know those are the Jews. And, you know, a lot of this part of Africa right here that I'm circling, all of this, you know, and a lot of this here is where our forefathers ran to as they were running from captivity, you know, from the other nations and Rome and all these people that were chasing them, you know, even when you know, Assyria and Babylon, you know, some of our people naturally got away, right? So we'd actually set up here in these areas running from our captors. But if you see here the slave coast, you know, an ancient map shows that to be called at that time the Kingdom of Judah. And as you can see, those lines going from the slave coast, you know, you can see they're going up to America, right? And that was the kingdom of Judah. So these are the kingdom of Judah being taken up here to America there, and you see this line here, all right? And of course, some were taken to South America. Of course, we're not going to say 100% went to the Americas. But if you look at the Americas, most of the Hebrews, and over here, you know, there was a slave coast called uh, the slave coast or the kingdom of Judah there too. So they were, of course, taking our people out of this area as well. So, you know, just to give you an idea, you know, this is how we were scattered around the world. The Bible says that we were scattered. What other people fit these curses, brothers and sisters? See, God is telling us who we are, and it's up to us to accept our heritage and our culture and our nationality. We are Hebrew Israelites, brothers and sisters, and we fit these prophecies. And this is some of the more difficult things we have to witness when we look at our people and how um, we've lost everything. Have we lost these things or not? Like, what other people fits these curses, brothers and sisters? They stripped us of our names, all right, which is Israel. Yashrael is a Hebrew way of saying it. Our culture, which is Hebrew. Okay, that's our culture, brothers and sisters. There's ways of dressing, ways of living. This is part of our culture that was Hebraic. We have a Hebrew culture. Our history, which is the Bible, so that's still available, brothers and sisters, if you'll read it. Our land was taken from us. That's Jerusalem. Our truth, which is the Torah. You see Psalms 119, 142 there, and you can also get way more information about the conspiracy against our people in Psalms 83, 1 through 4, but read all of Psalms 83 for understanding. And our God was, as we have here, the Hebrew word Yahuwah. And remember, Yah was in all of our names, right? Yah. The word Yah was in our names when we came. So that's why we had to lose our names, as you see in the roots depiction there in the top right. All these slavery, all these chains and, these yokes around our necks that we had to endure. So they must have been very afraid of us to have all these chains on us, right? They were very afraid of us, you know, because we were strong and powerful, and they knew that. There will be no rest for the weary. Okay, this is another terrible curse we had to endure, brothers and sisters. Even now, some of us work so hard. I worked for 20 years, 2 jobs and 3 jobs, and I can tell you, I did that, because I had kids, I had a family. I didn't have them with me, but I had to pay for my kids and take care of my kids, and it was very difficult at times, and I had to work hard. And sometimes I would work, well, I worked 7 days a week for probably 20 years. And most of the time it was just 2 jobs, but it was very difficult. So I can understand that, but I'm sure it's nothing compared to what our brothers and sisters went through during slavery and during other periods of captivity. In verse 65, it says, "You'll have no rest among those nations, and no places that is yours." So we are the only people in the world that have no land. All right, and you can just think on that for a moment. We're accepting of so many things that are not right. Like, of all the people of the world, we're the only people that don't have a land to call our own. African Americans don't know where we're from, the so-called African Americans. So we say we're American, but that's really 400 years old, brothers and sisters. That's really not the Europeans. It's not from the people from England and Spain who took over this country. It's really not, you know, it's not native to them. It was not their land. We know that. So how can any of us really be Native Americans? There's a group who are Native Americans. They're not us, and they're not the Europeans and whites that are here, or the Hispanics. The Hispanics come from South of America, right? They come from Mexico. Now keep in mind, a lot of Hispanics were already here because they took over a lot of their land and called it the United States. So a lot of Hispanic or Mexican land was taken from them. So they've had a lot of tragedy and travesties committed against them as well. But it says you'll have no rest among those nations and no place that is yours. It also says the Lord will make your heart worried and tremble. And so, this is what God is saying. I'm going to keep you worried and you're going to be trembling with fear. Your sight will be weak and your eyes will fail and your soul will be sad. It will languish and be depressed. And why? Because of the things that we see happening. How do you think the slaves felt uh, and what they thought? We all saw roots, and it seems like it's unimaginable, the horrors and torture and the bondage and the labor that they had to endure. You know, so this is what God said would happen to us, and it's happening. So what other people has this happened to, brothers and sisters? Who are the Israelites? You know, God said this is a sign for his people only if they disobey. You can see us in the fields here. This to me looks like a good picture because they look well dressed and they don't look like they're in that bad a shape. But I'm sure these people were really, really torn down and battered and beaten. This is our people, brothers and sisters. Yeah, we know about slavery, but we don't really look into it, do we? But what other people have had these curses? That's my point. What other people? Since we say we don't believe that the black Americans are the Hebrew Israelites and the other scattered people around the world, then who fits these curses? Because so far we fit all these curses. Are we being honest? Right? So far we're the only ones who fit these curses, brothers. These are the chain gangs of old. Um, we're seeing our brothers and sisters, well, our brothers here, were just abused, you know, out here looking for gold, out here building railroads as prisoners, and there was nothing we could do about it. And they all, now that's more of a realistic look. These guys look just beat down and torn down, and this is terrible to have to see our brothers like this. Really is. But this is what we've been through. Remember, the Lord said we'll be weary, and there won't be any rest for the weary. So we'll just be tired, but we'll have to keep going, and we'll have to keep pushing, and we'll look at some horrible things that'll break our hearts, and we'll have to keep going and moving on. How many things like that do you think the slaves endured back then? The curse of a life of danger. God says you will live with danger and suspense and be afraid night and day. You will not be sure that you will live. There'll be lynchings. These are my notes here in parentheses, and brutality. Well, that was the norm during slavery, right? And after slavery. But even now we have to fear for our lives when it comes to this nation's police force. And we've got evil citizens out there that get away with killing us and other law enforcement agents. I don't know if you've all seen the young teenager who was taking out the trash and got shot by a neighbor and killed. And we all know about, the guy who was walking to his car and had his hands up, and the lady cop shoots him in the back and kills him, and they just kind of treated him like a piece of meat while he was down there on the ground dying. They didn't even help the brother, you know. And Sandra Bland, you know, my heart just really goes out for that lady as she was killed, you know, beaten for just, being pulled over by the police. She didn't even violate any law, and then was killed in prison. I'm certain that she was killed not in prison but in jail, and they covered that up. And everybody who gets killed of our people gets covered up, or nobody pays the price. So we're constantly living in fear. I'll be honest with you. I fear being pulled over by a cop. Absolutely, especially if it's in a remote area and it's at night or something, because it doesn't matter what you do sometimes. You risk the chance of being killed. If you obey and give them obey all their commands, you could still be killed. How about the black guy that was running from the cop, and he was at least 20 feet from the cop, running and running, trying to get away, and the cop shoots him in the back and kills him. You can't kill if there's no threat against your life. If a man is running, how is your life threatened? I mean, you know, that's just saying that you're not going to have to worry about it, right? The guy's running away and he's getting away. Your life is not threatened, but you can kill the man and get away with it. Kill the brother, the Israelite, and get away with it. It says, in the morning you will say, I wish, oh, that it were evening. And in the evening you will say, I wish, oh, that it were morning. You know, because the evening there was terror and dread, and he says, will be in your heart, and the things you have seen will scare you. Man, why weren't our people afraid of this stuff? It just blows me away. Our people were not afraid of these. Remember, these warnings were given to us during the time of Moses. He wrote these down before anything was close to happening. And God did everything else he said he would do. Why would we think he wouldn't do this? I mean, you don't need to warn me too much about this kind of thing before I'm obeying the Lord. Look how they enjoyed killing us, brothers and sisters. This is another part that was really hard for me to watch. You've got men, I mean, it was okay for them to grab us, kidnap us, which I'm sure still happens on some level today when people turn up missing. And they could torture us and burn us. I mean, look at the wood on the fire there that they built up. I mean, they built up a great, you know, fire for this brother, man. And they killed our brother like this, our Hebrew Israelite brother, the chosen one of Israel, the chosen people of God being treated this way. And they got women out there. I see a woman here, smiling there in the sort of in the middle right. You can see her smiling. These guys have on suits, man. Why do they have on suits? I mean, they really dressed up to come out for this event. Look how they treated us, brothers and sisters. This is a curse that God allowed because of our disobedience. So see, it doesn't get any better in the lake of fire. We can't continue to be disobedient to our God. Another terrible picture. I mean, look at our brother. He's just, I mean, they've got his body all contorted and twisted up, and you know, not only did they kill this brother, but they burned him. Brothers and sisters, look at what God has allowed. See, we're thinking that the white man did this to us. Yes, and he's the one who acted out the demonism. That's true. We have to admit that. But brothers and sisters, this is a result of our disobedience. Who else fits these curses of living in danger and being treated this way? See, we get to ignore what our people have been through, but nobody has been through what we've been through. Look at this kind of horrible thing that happens to our people. I mean, this is terrible that our people are treated this way. You know, I mean, it's just terrible. You know, um, it's hard to watch, but I had to give some of these pictures some time and some room in my video because I have to show us the truth. We have to be able to look back at what has really happened to us. And, I'm trying to compel all of us to obey God by looking at the things that God has allowed for disobedience. This is what God has allowed to us, brothers and sisters, because of our disobedience. So we have to obey Him. And this was a really tough one, brothers and sisters. I mean, these guys are really enjoying themselves. That guy standing on the post almost looks like one of the guys in the last pictures. They're really enjoying. I mean, what kind of person can stand there, you know, and enjoy watching another man scream and howl and as he's being set on fire and destroyed and burned? What kind of people can sit there and watch that? But they don't want us to discuss these things. They want us to forget about what was done to our people. We're just supposed to forget about it. They tell us, oh, get over it, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, stop complaining. You guys are a complaining race of people. All you do is complain when you can get out there on your own and get your own life together. Like that's fair to us to have to forget about what's been done to us. We haven't received reparations or any kind of, compensation for making this country the top of the line nation that it is. And this is how we were treated in order for them to get that position. And this is just horrible, brothers and sisters. I mean, they burned off his lower body. I mean, these guys are enjoying this. He doesn't even have a face. I mean, he's been burned to a crisp, and pieces of him are really what remain. And our women didn't get it any easier. The curse of a life of danger, horror for the entire black family. Our children, look at our little girls. And, she's a model showing some of the equipment that was used against our people. But, this woman on being hung on the tree there she's whipped and, she's being whipped. And they're just whipping and brutalizing our people, always in nakedness. Just horrible things happening to our people all the time. A lot of people have seen this picture of this brother whose back is beaten so badly. This is, as they say, a message to the forgotten Israelites. We're hoping you don't forget who you are and where you came from. This is just terrible things that were done to us. The way we were treated like meat here on the right, which is Deuteronomy 28:32, showing us, how they treated us like cattle. And what good is it going to look into a woman's mouth like that? What good is that going to do you? You know, I guess, you could be looking for disease or something, but I mean, we weren't treated as human beings. And God allowed all of this because of our disobedience. Well, He's not going to do this again to us, brothers and sisters. He's going to throw us into the lake of fire if we continue to disobey. So I just hope that some of you are willing to repent and come back to God and come back to following God. And those of you who don't believe in God or consider yourselves to be non-believers, you're taking a chance on your eternity. You would feel better if you just went ahead and did some research and did some work and tried to get an understanding of your spirituality. You'll find what you need. God will help you do that, but you can't sit out here and not believe in God. I'm showing you Deuteronomy 28, which was written 3,500 years ago. I mean, it was written 3,500 years ago, brothers and sisters, maybe 3,000 on the short side, and it's all taken place. And what does it take for you to believe in the Word of God? It's real and it's true. And the power of the Word of God is its prophetic power. Of course, God's going to give you something that you can't deny. If He's predicting everything that He knows is going to happen on His world, on His planet, long, long before it happens, that tells you that there must be a God. He's been able to do that all the way. And He's done that so that we'll listen to Him. Are you listening to Him? You have the right to remain silent, underrepresented, and poor. That's what this cartoon says. It's a Ferguson, Missouri cartoon. Just showing how our people are treated. Only nation brought into captivity in slave ships. All right. That's another thing you want to ask yourself, brothers and sisters, if you're not sure we're the true Hebrew Israelites. It says in 68, the Lord will send you back to Egypt. Okay, Egypt was not the original name of the land, it was Misraim. And Egypt is a Greek word meaning besieged or bondage. And He sends us back in ships, even though, okay, no other nation was taken or sent into uh, slavery with ships, you know. And to continue that verse, it starts here with I, Moses, okay, said you would never go back to Egypt, and there you will try to sell yourselves as slaves to your enemies, but no one will buy you. Right? So, you know, Moses is saying, I said you would never go back to Egypt. That's if you obey. And if you disobey, you're going in slave ships. All right? So this is one of the number one verses that I think identifies the true Hebrew Israelites. Because no, we didn't have to go into slave ships to go into slavery in all the other lands in Europe, Arabia, you know, Asia, Africa. We didn't have to go into ships to get to those nations, you know. And even if we did, well, it was still us. No one said this prophecy had to happen only one time. These prophecies have happened to us throughout our history. Just like the prophecy of eating our children, that was during 70 AD. You know, I don't know of any other time that has happened, and I hope it never happens again. But these things have happened to us throughout our entire history. as Hebrew Israelites because of our disobedience. And I just want to reiterate that no other nation was brought back into bondage with ships except us. Okay? That's by itself to me, a factor that determines easily who the true Hebrew Israelites are. I hate to keep repeating myself, but I just want people to stay on focus and on point here. This lesson with these curses is to show that this is a sign. God said it would be a wonder and a sign to show who his people are. I'm not even going to go into talking about the people who are in Israel now. They have not experienced any of this. And this would all be experienced until Jesus comes back and delivers us and gathers the scattered children of Israel from the four corners of the earth, right? We read about that. So how can they be, fit these curses? They don't fit them. Only we fit them. We're still in bondage and we're still suffering. The transatlantic slave route, as you know, was largely for merchandise. So, I know the Arabs played a big role in it, and I think they facilitated a lot of the process. And then Africans were the one receiving goods, and then the slaves were sent out as merchandise. And so you can take a look here, and you can see, sugar and manufacturing goods were really a big part of the triangle trade route in selling our people. So they made money on us, brothers and sisters. And as you can see, from the land or kingdom of Judah, most of those were going up to the United States. So that's why, again, I say that most believe the tribe of Judah is the majority, the vast majority of the black Americans here in this country. I know many of us have seen this, but just take a moment to consider that this journey could take over a month, and you were going to be in this position for over a month, and sometimes it took more than a month or two, depending on stops and things of that nature, brothers and sisters. So I mean, this stuff humbles me. I'm humbled to see our people treated this way. Can you imagine being that close to another man and having to suffer through that? No matter what came up. If you had to use the bathroom, you had to use it on yourself, and your brothers and sisters had to lay in your own waste, your own urine, and your own defecation. Other people were laying in this stuff. Everybody was laying in their own waste. They would come down there and spray down the hull of the ships with hoses because they didn't care how we were living. It's just unbelievable how we were treated. Curses again against us for disobedience. Our people have made it through the worst any nation has ever had to suffer. So we are a strong people, brothers and sisters, and we've made it a long way. So we got to stick with it. Things are better for us than they were back then, for sure. But we are still in captivity, brothers and sisters. And don't forget, our captivity is a result of our disobedience. So it would behoove us to stop disobeying God, right? I'd like to say here, as the heading says, absolutely no one fits these curses but the true Israelites, the black slaves. Okay? So many of you are saying, whatever it is you're saying. I know sometimes I'm doing this work and I make 4 parts, and some people never watch the fourth part. But this is the one that really seals it up. That was our last verse. And we see here that no other people fit these curses. All right, this is undeniable proof that we are the people of the book, and the blessings and curses were listed for us. Historically and biblical prophecy continues to state that our people will be scattered throughout the nations of the earth. And that's what we have now, brothers and sisters. No other people had this been done to, or had this done to them. No other people. No other people were scattered with ships than our people. No other people have remained in captivity the majority of their, their existence. And that's really what our people have done. We've been captives and slaves and served other nations for the majority of our existence. We're the last nation to come to be because God chose us through the seed of Abraham, right? Well, there were already nations. The nations were already in existence. All right, so nobody fits these curses, brothers and sisters, but us. Remember, we were removed, not migrated to other nations like the Jews who are in Israel now. They willingly left and went to those nations. They willingly took over Israel, when the world helped them out. This is one of the biggest differences between us and the identity thieves that are in the land now. All other nations, even though some of them had some bad things happen to them, none of them have been taken as slaves into all nations of the earth. None of these curses have been placed on them. We know the Jews right now run the world. They run the music industry, the entertainment industry, the news industry. They are the bankers of the world, so they're the ones who lend. They do not have to borrow. So how could these curses fit them? All right? These blessings and curses are specifically related to only one people, and God says that he would place a sign on his people, and that's the Hebrew Israelites after the Exodus led by Moses, the prophet, out of the land of Egypt. And remember, God gave these words to Moses to warn the people of what would happen if they refused to comply with the Ten Commandments and served other gods. They were duly warned, but they did not obey. And I ask right now, brothers and sisters, those who are new in the truth, I give you respect that you're trying to learn. Those who are non-believers, you know, I just hope that you understand that the word of prophecy is here to get you to understand that God exists. God has done things in the world to show you he is real, and you can't keep denying the facts that you see around you. And Christian brothers and sisters, my Christian brothers and sisters, you think you're living righteously and holy, but if you're disobeying God, you are not. And you will not see the kingdom that he has promised to those who follow him, because he says you have to follow him to receive that kingdom. Brothers and sisters who are in Christ, you know, you are my brothers and sisters if you follow the laws and statutes and commands of God, and I have no quarrel with you. It's the Christian brothers and sisters who say that they are following God and they're not, who believe they are true followers of Christ and they are not. I'm not angry with you. What I am is pleading with you to stop disobeying God and to repent and to come back to the Lord and see how he has called you out of the darkness into the marvelous light. He's trying to give you the kingdom, brothers and sisters. Jesus comes back to gather us, the people of Israel, the children of Israel. Okay? And who else fits these curses but us? No one. In conclusion, brothers and sisters, I'd just like to say we are the Hebrew Israelites the Bible speaks of. Here in the United States, the black Americans and all the other and black people across the globe that have been scattered. I'm not talking about the Africans that are native to that land or the Hamitic peoples of that land. I'm speaking of the Hebrews who have been chased into Africa and chased all over the world. We are those people. All right, we are the so-called Negro or African Americans here in the United States, and obviously there are many others that fit these curses worldwide, but they too are Hebrew Israelites. Now the God of Israel has said that these curses would be a sign and a wonder the world would have to identify who we are. Deuteronomy 28:46 says, "And they shall be upon thee for a sign and a wonder, and upon thy seed forever." So if this is what the Almighty God says, who can refute it? All right, brothers and sisters, we're done with the presentation. But what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to read the King James Version of all verses 14 through 68 that pertain to the curses of Israel. These are only to the children of Israel, as it says, if we would hearken and obey to the voice of the Lord and obey his statutes and commands, we'll be blessed. And if we disobey, we'll be cursed. Now, the whole point is not to show strictly what went on with slavery. Use slavery to kind of give us a history of what we've been through so we can actually witness and look at some of the depictions of what slavery was like for us. But the objective overall is that you understand that these are the curses that God placed on only the children of Israel, and to show you that you can identify who the children of Israel truly are based on these curses. And I'm just going to read through all of the verses from here on to close it out. "And thou shalt not go aside from any of the words which I command thee this day, to the right hand or to the left, to go after other gods to serve them. But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee." So this can only be the children of Israel. "Cursed shalt thou be in the city, and cursed shalt thou be in the field. Cursed shall be thy basket and thy store. Cursed shall be the fruit of thy body, and the fruit of thy land, and the increase of thy kind, and the flocks of thy sheep. Cursed shalt thou be when thou comest in, and cursed shalt thou be when thou goest out. The Lord shall send upon thee cursings, vexation, and rebuke, in all that ye setteth thine hand unto for to do, until thou be destroyed, and until thou perish quickly, because of the wickedness of thy doings, whereby thou hast forsaken me." "The Lord shall make the pestilence cleave unto thee, until he have consumed thee from off the land whither thou goest to possess it. The Lord shall smite thee with a consumption, and with a fever, and with an inflammation, and with an extreme burning, and with the sword, and with blasting, and with the mildew, and they shall pursue thee until thou perish. And thy heaven that is over thy head shall be brass, and the earth that is under thy feet shall be iron. The Lord shall make the rain of thy land powder and dust. From the heaven shall it come down upon thee, until thou be destroyed. The Lord shall cause thee to be smitten before thine enemies. Thou shalt go out one way against them, and flee 7 ways before them. Thou shalt be removed into all the kingdoms of the earth. And thy carcass shall be meat unto all fowls of the air, and unto the beasts of the earth, and no man shall fray them away." The Lord shall smite thee with the botch of Egypt, and with the emerods, and with the scab, and with the itch, which thou canst not be healed. And that's emerods is hemorrhoids. The Lord shall smite thee with madness and blindness and astonishment of heart, and thou shalt grope at noonday, and the blind gropeth in darkness, and thou shalt not prosper in thy ways, and thou shalt be only oppressed and spoiled evermore. No man shall save thee. Thou shalt betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her. Thou shalt build an house, and thou shalt not dwell therein. Thou shalt plant a vineyard, and thou shalt not gather the grapes thereof. Thine ox shall be slain before thine eyes, and thou shalt not eat thereof. Thine ass shall be violently taken away from before thy face, and shall not be restored to thee. Thy sheep shall be given unto thine enemies, and thou shalt have none to rescue them. Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in thine hand. The fruit of thy land and all thy labors shall be a nation which thou knowest not eat up, and thou shalt be only oppressed and crushed alway, so that thou shalt be mad for the sight of thine eyes which thou shalt see. The Lord shall smite thee in the knees and in the legs, with a sore botch that cannot be healed, from the sole of thy foot unto the top of thy head. The Lord shall bring thee and thy king, which thou shalt set over thee, unto a nation which neither thou nor thy fathers have known. And there shalt thou serve other gods, wood and stone. And thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations whither thou shalt lead thee. Thou shalt carry much seed out into the field, and shalt gather but little in, for the locust shall consume it. Thou shalt plant vineyards and dress them, but shalt neither drink of the wine nor gather the grapes, for the worms shall eat them. Thou shalt have olive trees throughout all thy coasts, but thou shalt not anoint thyself with the oil, for thine olive shall cast his fruit. Thou shalt beget sons and daughters, but thou shalt not enjoy them, for they shall go into captivity. All thy trees and fruit of thy land shall the locusts consume. The stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low. He shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him. He shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail. Moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee, and overtake thee, till thou be destroyed, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to keep his commandments and his statutes which he commanded thee. And they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever. Because thou servest not the Lord thy God with joyfulness and with gladness of heart, for the abundance of all things. Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee, in hunger, and in thirst, and in nakedness, and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck, until he have destroyed thee. The Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as an eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand, a nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young. And he shall eat the fruit of thy cattle, and the fruit of thy land, until thou be destroyed, which also shall not leave thee either corn, wine, or oil, or the increase of thy kine, or flocks of thy sheep, until he hath destroyed thee. And he shall besiege thee in all thy gates, until thy high and fenced walls come down, wherein thou trustest throughout all thy land, and he shall besiege thee in all thy gates throughout all thy land, which the Lord thy God hath given thee. And thou shalt eat the fruit of thine own body, the flesh of thy sons and of thy daughters, which the Lord thy God hath given thee, in the siege and in the straitness, wherewith thine enemies shall distress thee. So that the man that is tender among you, and very delicate, his eye shall be evil toward his brother, and toward the wife of his bosom, and toward the remnant of his children, which he shall leave, so that he will not give to any of them of the flesh of his children, whom he shall eat, because he hath nothing left in the siege and in the straitness, wherewith thine enemies shall distress thee in all. The tender and delicate woman among you, which would not adventure to set the sole of her foot upon the ground for delicateness and tenderness. Her eye shall be evil toward the husband of her bosom, and toward her son, and toward her daughter, and toward her young, and toward her young one that cometh out from her between her feet, and toward her children which she shall bear. For she shall eat them for want of all things secretly in the siege and straitness, wherewith thine enemies shall distress thee in thy gates. If thou wilt not observe to do all the words of this law that are written in this book, thou mayest fear this glorious and fearful name, the Lord thy God. Then the Lord will make thy plagues wonderful, and the plagues of thy seed, even great plagues, and of long continuance, and sore sickness, and of long continuance. Moreover, he will bring upon thee all the diseases of Egypt, which thou wast afraid of, and they shall cleave unto thee. And also every sickness and every plague which is not written in the book of this law, them will the Lord bring upon thee, until thou be destroyed, and ye shall be left few in number, whereas ye were as the stars of heaven for multitude, because thou wouldest not obey the voice of the Lord thy God. And it shall come to pass that as the Lord rejoiced over you to do you good, and to multiply you, so the Lord will rejoice over you to destroy you, and to bring you to naught, and ye shall be plucked from off the land whither thou goest to possess it. And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, from the one end of the earth even unto the other. And there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. And among these nations shalt thou find no ease, neither shalt the sole of thy foot have rest. But the Lord shall give thee there a trembling heart, and failing of eyes, and sorrow of mind. And thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, and thou shalt fear day and night, and shalt have none assurance of thy life. In the morning thou shalt say, Would God it were even, and at even thou shalt say, Would God it were morning. For the fear of thine heart wherewith thou shalt fear, and for the sight of thine eyes which thou shalt see. And finally, brothers and sisters, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee, Thou shalt see it no more again, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. That means that no man shall buy you out of your slavery. So, brothers and sisters, there's a couple of things I want to note here. Number one, this lesson is to show you that no one can fit the curses that we just read here but the people of God, the children of Israel. And I don't think anyone can deny that only the people in America and the other slaves and captives who were forced into slavery throughout the world, which have been scattered throughout the world, can fit these curses but us. The other thing I want to impress upon you, brothers and sisters, is that these curses were a result of disobedience to God. You are disobeying God right now if you are not observing His Sabbath day, His 7 holy feast days, and the 10 commandments which He has placed before you, as well as the dietary law. So I just ask that those who find themselves disobeying God repent, because God will allow you back into His good graces if you repent, which means to stop. Not to say you repent and continue, but to stop the things that you're doing that are not of God. Start to follow the the holy days, the feast days. Obey that dietary law, brothers and sisters, because that's a part of God's word. God is not going to give you a dietary law if it's not there for your good. Everything else is going to make you unhealthy. So, brothers and sisters, this is the end of our lesson, The Curses of Israel, Part 4. I hope someone and everyone that listened was able to learn, and I hope you all were able to identify who the true Hebrew Israelites are. Shalom.